Because I think that was one of the most key things that I learned early on that shifted everything for me, was there is no sacred secular divide.
Hi, and welcome to Storia, where storytellers disrupt. I'm David Noroña.
And I'm Fabiano Altamura.
And before we hop into today's episode, please remember to like, subscribe, follow, and give us that 5-star review.
Yep. Today we have the honor of having the beautiful Michelle Lynn in the studio. So Michelle, she's a Canadian pianist and singer and enjoys a variety career of performing widely across Europe, coaching and speaking. As co-founder of the Fearless Artist Mastermind, she works with musicians all over the world to help them pursue their own unique opportunities and believes they should not be their own ceilings. She holds positions in music entrepreneurship at the Conservatory in Maastricht and the Code Arts University of the Arts in Rotterdam. She graduated from Université de Montréal with a master's degree in piano performance and is happily based in the Netherlands.
I'm so excited because, Michelle, I think your bio is the first one to actually choke Fab live on the podcast.
It has a few layers.
I'm sorry about that, Michelle.
No worries. I can't even say it half the time. So it's Maastricht.
It's Maastricht. It's so funny because she's based in the Netherlands.
Okay.
And Ella was chatting to us. So Ella, our revival group pastor, for those that you don't know it, at Bethel Conservatory of the Arts, was like, you've got to have Michelle talk to your students. And I was like, I would love to. Will you connect us? And then Ella connected us. And then Michelle came and did a session in professional development for marketing for the artist.
Wow.
And it was absolutely unbelievable.
So I'm curious, Michelle, how did you begin your journey as an artist? What was that like for you? Did you grow up in a musical home? Tell us a little bit of your Genesis origin story.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a typical upbringing. Started piano when I was 4. My mom sat with me at the piano. My dad played drums in a country band, so I sang with them. Just music was always around me. Had really great teachers.
Okay, that's not typical at all. I can tell you right now. That's already. I love how you're like, no, totally typical. Mom at the piano, dad on the drums, country band. Yeah, no, I mean, I wish I grew up in that home.
Singing "The Hills Are Alive" with the sound of music. It's totally natural.
So clearly, a home full of musicians. And did you just get bit by the bug because it was around you all the time?
I can sing every lyric to every country song from the 90s. So music was on all the time. It was definitely my surroundings. So yeah, maybe it was.
Little Garth Brooks?
Absolutely.
A little Garth Brooks in your life?
Come on. Shania Twain, big fan.
Oh,
gosh. You know what? I'm there. Fab doesn't know who you're talking about right now, but I'm with you.
Shania Twain is. I'm so sorry, Michelle. You really have to forgive me. I absolutely, country music is like cats scratching on a chalkboard.
Oh, we just lost half our audience. You're
I'm so sorry. And I live in redneck California, Northern California.
Oh my gosh, you've got to stop.
No, they do, where they love country music. And I'm sorry, Michelle.
No,
you're
listen,
amazing, but I hate country music.
Okay, before we continue, because we've got to vaccinate Fab against this particular virus that he's expressing right now on air. Listen, come on. Can we talk about this for 1 second before we get back to your story? Here's what I love. I'm Cuban, by the way, so don't play the Latin
How do you love Cuban music?
No, I love
Latin music if you're Cuban. Oh, hey, how do you love country music if you're Cuban?
I'll tell you why. Great melodies, phenomenal storytelling. Can I get an amen?
That's a great point. Definitely.
No.
Okay, so why did you fall in love? I mean, did you grow up in the South? Why country music? I'm curious.
I'm from Alberta, Canada, so we're kind of the Texas of Canada in that sense.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, and Shania Twain is from
Absolutely.
Canada.
Yeah. And actually in elementary school, part of our gym class was learning how to two-step. So that's something we can teach back.
Of course it was.
Wow. Shania Twain was, ooh, I feel like a woman.
Well, she's way more than that, but yes.
I'm just saying.
Please
don't try singing it again. Don't hurt yourself. The bio already hurt you enough. Okay, so continue the origin story. So there you are sitting at this piano, and it sounds like you started playing at an early age. Did you study classical piano from an early age?
Definitely. I grew up wanting to be a country singer, and my mom said, no, you can't do that. You need to study classical piano. So I took classical lessons. I had a great teacher, and then I moved on to 18 years old when I had to decide between piano or basketball. So I chose for piano, which meant I moved away and kept studying with some really great teachers. And then I met my Montreal teacher who I studied with at a summer program, which I highly recommend for all artists. Get out and study with as many different teachers as you can because you need that influence. And that just rocked my world because he stripped me down, restarted my technique. He saw the potential. But at that point, I was like a big fish, small pond. So I thought things were fine. And then you go to like the real institution and they're like, welcome, we're going to retrain you. that was scary. And everything was in French. So it was even more scary. But luckily I had a small crew of Anglophones that I kind of hung out with and found my safety there.
Wow. And Michelle, so you trained in predominantly classical piano, coming out of that obviously lovely genre of music that we classify as country. But like, what made you? What did you do after that? How did you start earning a living as an artist?
Yeah, so
were you constantly working concert to concert?
I was teaching a lot of piano lessons to kind of have that income stability, and I was also having a lot of scholarships or grant money when I was in school. And then as soon as I graduated, I had the biggest choice of my life was to do a doctorate degree, which was the world was telling me was absolutely necessary to get a faculty position. So that just seemed to be the obvious choice, climb up this ladder, or jump over the pond to Europe. So I kind of played the safe route where I told my teacher, save spot for me for the doctorate. I'm coming back in 2 years. I froze my apartment. I kept it. I subletted it. I kept my grand piano. Everything just froze so that I could go explore Europe and then come back. And I think that was kind of like a way that I made it a safe jump for me. And then once I got over here, I realized very quickly, like, you don't turn around after 2 years if you're going to go live in Europe because it's amazing. And I kept teaching piano for basic income stability. And then since then, it's been able to diversify into different income streams like we talked about.
Wow, it's good. What I like about Michelle, she's really, she has rewritten the script of the starving artist mentality. I love how you don't think scarcely, Michelle, how you've used your art to actually provide another stream of income. Because a lot of the time as artists, we'll go and get a job in a nightclub or in a bar or as a waiter or whatever. But you actually focused on making money through your art. Was that something that came natural to you? How did you kind of decide to become like an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, I think teaching piano for me was a really easy way to still combine my interests, my love of the kids and developing a pedagogy style for myself where that was stable. And then I could look for concerts on the side. And I did, one of the things that we teach, I have a coaching company for musicians, The Fearless Artist. So you could argue that that's outside of the art because I've had to learn skills like coaching and facilitation and marketing and sales and all of those things. But it does always come back to that core of who we are as artists. But we also tell artists, there's, again, coming back to scarcity, there's this understanding that if you don't earn all your money in your art, then you're somehow lesser of an artist. And that's also something that we want to break off of people because like income can come in any way. It doesn't change your contribution or what you want to do as an artist. And it might actually alleviate the pressure to earn all of your income in one stream so that when something like COVID happens and all your concerts stop, you don't spiral, but you have options.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It reminds me, I remember when Sean Bowles spoke at Bethel a handful of years ago at one of the prophetic conferences. He said something that really, really stuck with me. He said, your provision is in your creativity. Mm-hmm. And I'd always had this mindset that, a couple lies that I thought. Number one, that, early on before I met the Lord, that you might have to prostitute yourself in order to earn something, that you should take whatever's given to you. So there's that lie. The other lie that I believed was that I would have to hustle in order to provide for my creativity versus seeing my art and my creativity as a source of provision. Michelle, getting back to you. So you study at conservatory, you begin to, it sounds like, restructure a lot of your musical technique, which a lot of artists go through. It's not that studying as a kid isn't valuable, but sometimes, right, we have to like renegotiate the way that we were taught things. Maybe there's some bad habits, but I'm sure you also learned a ton of discipline. Talk to us about that step now. After you've started studying, take us to the next part of your story. Where do you go from there? You graduate, and how do you start entering the world of being a working professional?
Yeah, I mean, those years were the toughest of my career. And based on those years is why we actually started our coaching company now, to provide artists with the tools and skills that they need that I didn't have then. So basically, I was very lost, didn't know how to make connections and network, how to get integrated into a new community, also a new culture. Like I left my school and my country at the same time, which was a total shock to the system.
Wow.
So my strategy was to start piecing together opportunities. I really love that provision and the creativity thing, because I think that as you continue to dig, there's a lot of dirt, but then you start to find gold, and you have to kind of keep going to get to the water of the well, as you go deeper into it, and trusting that there's something there. But a lot of people give up too soon before you can see the results of that. So I was doing background gigs. I started to get a couple students. I was looking at some competitions and just trying to get in the world. And then eventually things started to open up.
Do you have any, sorry, I'm just curious, like in those years, those tough years when you leave, do you remember any stories, any maybe tough moments? Maybe first odd, strange gigs, or any fun stories from the battlefield?
I mean, the most down moment, I think, was when I looked at some of my friends and I just said, like, I'm totally lost and stuck. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this at all. And I just totally wanted to quit. And the only reason I didn't stop playing completely was just I felt sick. I can't explain it other than it's like my soul knew that I was supposed to be playing. And if I wasn't feeding that, I wasn't well internally, So that was enough of a sign that I should keep going. But in terms of bad gigs, I mean, there's so many stories. But once we were told that we would be performing for a large group, and we prepared really well, and it was Schumann, like it was something pretty serious. And then we show up and it was the Rotary Club, and these guys just wanted to chat and have a great time. So they were like screaming to hear each other over our Schumann. And we were told this was a concert. So I had a little bit of a trauma from getting shoved into a corner at events and playing background music. Like that's something I'm never going to do again.
And how did you find the Lord along throughout your journey? Is the Lord been with you all the time, or is it something that did you only accept it kind of like later in your career?
Faith-wise, I think I really gave my life to Jesus when I was 21. So my faith was always there. It was actually a lot of kingdom mindset teaching that helped me unravel this starving artist, small mindset stuff, just pieces by pieces. Like we did Paul Manwaring's the MKA, learning, nothing's ever wasted. Okay, what does that mean if nothing's wasted? And here I am in the middle of, I was way too busy. I was exhausted. I wasn't happy with my output, thinking I should switch, but not knowing, And then there's a Psalm, I think it's Psalm 36, commit and trust, commit to the Lord and trust. And I kept having that come back. It's like, well, I'm not committed because I'm not putting in the hours because I don't really believe that there's something on the other side, and then something like Chris Valentin, how he explains that the guy who finds the gold gave up 10 meters before he got there. And, because you don't persevere.
Right.
And so learning about sharpening your character and persevering and putting in the work and sowing and reaping and then seeing pockets of harvest come. I think that was really encouraging too. The first time I started playing in Paris, or then I got connected with a quartet down there and new opportunities started coming. So you kind of get a glimpse of what the potential is if you keep going. And you're like, wait, like this is actually possible. Maybe it's possible.
Right. Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the not giving up moments, if you're willing to go there with us. Like, I'm curious, other than encouragement from friends, what epiphany did you have? What revelation did you have? What thought came to mind? What was that first step where you're like, okay, where did the mind shift happen for you internally? What did that look like?
In terms of quitting and, not practicing anymore, I don't know, maybe it's this internal thing that you're supposed to do this and that you're avoiding it because I could recognize the fear in my life. I could recognize the ways that I thought I wasn't good enough, or the ways that I was cutting myself off, or not believing in my potential, or not seeing if it was possible because of my own choices. A lot of what we do is self-driven and self-motivated. So if you don't show up and put in the work, if you don't find people who can influence you or inspire you, it's not going to happen. So I think it was just, knowing that if I gave up, it would be such a loss. There was kind of an internal sense of that.
Because a lot of actors, musicians and dancers seem to have that value for the daily grind. Like, well, I'll practice my pieces, an hour a day, 2 hours a day. Dancers will stretch. Actors, sometimes they're like, well, what are they going to do apart from read plays and do vocal warm-ups, constantly audition? It's like I really love the fact that, you know, the dancers and musicians have this value for training every day. I don't know if actors do.
No, I mean, I know that I avoided it. I mean, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, this conversation is kind of rocking me on the inside in a good way because, you know, Michelle, you mentioned how pain or disappointment can kind of keep you, and it's, you look on the outside like you're still, you know, pursuing the thing, but you're not really, because something inside you, some circuit breaker has gone off. How did you how do you handle disappointment? How have you navigated disappointment in a healthy way in order to continue to move forward and do your thing?
I got a really good coach named Ella Hooper. No, but like 100% Ella has shaped so much of how I viewed, you know, I came from a very, a lot of self-condemnation, perfectionism, critical mindset, that inner critic voice, you know, putting so much pressure on myself and thinking every opportunity was the opportunity. And if it didn't work out, then everything was gone, you know, the all or nothing mindset, the fixed mindset. We talked a lot. So I had to learn a lot about gentleness, about self-compassion, about a righteous man falls 7 times but gets up again, um, about God giving second chances. You know, I thank the Lord a lot for second chances because there have been concerts that went really badly, but somehow I'm still playing. You know, we are told, the world tells you if you screw up once, you know, you're only as good as your last concert. I don't believe that, because I've had so many chances to try again. I've had opportunities for growth, I've had opportunities for process, and then there's been this opportunity for refinement. And, you know, James Clear talks about 1% better every time. So kind of just looking like, how can I incrementally get towards what I really desperately want, but I've been avoiding going for because I was so afraid that I could never get there. And I don't want anyone to judge me. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm not good enough. So I'm just going to stay small and hide, which is what I did for a long time until I was miserable. And I was like, I can't do this. I really need to try and go for it and see what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's good that, because it's like, it's the 1% change, isn't it? It's like, you think, well, if I just make a 1% daily change, that's 365% difference in a year, right? That 1% change. And I love how you've gone after that. You've gone after emotional health, because, you know, you mentioned, you know, pain sometimes will stop you, but pain sometimes will also encourage you to push further, you know. And I want to talk to you about, as an artist, I know a little bit about your story during COVID, but I love how you pivoted, and you had to restore order of when you were, like most artists, when they were performing
Yeah.
live. We have this 2020 catastrophe called COVID. Like, how did you pivot? Is that when you started your emotional health journey? Were you doing it before? Like, how did all that stuff that you prepared for prepare you for COVID?
Yeah, COVID was a significant time, obviously, for all of us. I started working with Ella in 2017. So I think by 2020, I had some really good tools to kind of figure out, okay, let's look for the possibilities here. Let's look for what we can now do. And we had just started our coaching company, The Fearless Artist, and we were already meeting online. So suddenly we had way more time to meet with people online, and we started hosting free live Zoom calls to help try and talk musicians through a lot of negative mindsets, a lot of poverty mindsets, a lot of lack. I mean, it was scary. Everything was canceled, but people, you know, fear also, it can just spiral. And especially what you're allowing in your mind. We were trying to give people something positive to focus on. So what we said a lot was limitation brings direction. Okay, fine. Doors are closed, but now what do you have? And what we all had was, you know, building our social platform and looking for opportunities there. So I chose to put my energy into meeting people on Instagram and starting to post practicing videos, content videos. I did a ton of live stream concerts. I was invited to play for a concert series in Vancouver. Okay, stuff started happening that I could never have done before COVID. Well, I could have done it, but we didn't realize. For example, my grandmother lived in a care home for the last 5 years of her life. Suddenly, I was giving her regular concerts over FaceTime because of COVID. We could have done this before COVID, but nobody thought, why don't you play for your grandma on FaceTime? Because we didn't have that limitation of what's left. So then you realize there's actually a lot of potential with what's left. Let's dig into this. So then I started doing these one-on-one VIP for your ears only concerts. I sold 50 of these things where I would play for someone for half an hour. I get, like, you know, I put on my dress, I put on my makeup just to stay at home all day. Like, it sounds crazy, But then I would get to play for someone in, someone bought a concert for their grandparents in England who were isolating and feeling really lonely. So then I get to share with them a program that I performed just for them. And they say, this nocturne was something that my mother used to play and it means so much to me. And when do I ever get to talk to my audience in such a personal way? Not unless they come up to me at the end or they write me on Instagram, because now I'm playing for hundreds of people. So I don't get to have a personal conversation with everyone. So it was just like, whoa, there's so much gold here. And everybody thought that the world had collapsed. But actually, when you look at what you can use, using the remainder, it was really beautiful.
Gosh, it's just mind stretching. I think about water and air, and I think about how water will always find a way.
Yeah.
It will always find a way. And your attitude, your mindset it was just based and rooted in life. Like you were just still pursuing life. In that vein, I'd love to shift with you a little bit and talk to you just about your art. I mean, we've been talking a lot about mental health and professional strategies, and these things are really amazing. But I'm kind of a sucker for beautiful music. And what's your favorite piece and why?
Favorite piece. I'm very particular to Brahms. I love the rich harmonies, the choral pieces that he's written, his intermezzi. I think that there's such a depth and a richness in his writing. And of course, it stems from Bach, who's, the father of everything that we've ever done. So there's just a lot of tradition, a lot of history rooted in that.
When you play a piece, is it an act of worship or how do you engage with God? And and I recognize it doesn't always have to be the case, but when you do, what is that like for you? Describe that place and that space.
Okay, so this is something that I'm still really trying to walk on stage in 100% authority for, and I think I'm really getting a grasp on it, which is exciting. But I led worship for a long time, and then you've got the prayer team, you've got the people who are open, everybody's hearts are ready to prepare to worship, and then you lead worship, and it's kind of like, okay, you feel the atmosphere shift, let's go for it. And now when I walk on for a piano concert, I'm the one praying for them before backstage. I try to take a couple seconds on stage and worship and just release God's presence. And then I just invite the Holy Spirit, and it's me alone. So the feeling is different. You don't feel like the crowd is, but the answers, the responses that I'm getting from people. And actually last week, somebody came up to me and said, "Can I ask you a personal question?" He said, "Are you playing with someone?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "When you played, I saw you were connecting with someone." I was like, it's the Holy Spirit. It was wild. And that was the same day that Bill posted the reel where they were talking about a person resting on a person as they played music for people. So I'm really trying to view my opportunities as a classical pianist just as if I was leading worship on a Sunday morning. I am releasing the presence of God. I'm bringing in healing. People are being set free. Chains are broken. God is here because I'm worshiping at the piano, no matter what I'm doing.
And the thing is, you're not doing it in a Christian.
No, these people are coming. They have no idea that they're about to get blasted. But I'm just trying to be like, use me, let your glory shine through me. Come and do what you want to do here.
You're breaking all the mindsets of a lot of. I just think you're breaking so much, and the way you do it, disruption is like, you found an opportunity during COVID. You were doing it even before then to pivot where other people weren't necessarily pivoted. You were innovative, and it completely changed the course of how you engage with your audience, how you built your business, and then now you're doing it back in person again. It's like the Holy Spirit is just like what I talk about is like we are the temple of the Holy Spirit, right? Whenever the presence comes in us, it always attracts an audience. Because back when Bezalel created the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle, and the pillar of cloud came down and cast a shadow of protection over the tabernacle, it's as everybody went out of each of their own tent to see what was happening. The presence attracts an audience. And I love that you're doing it, not necessarily a faith-based setting, and the audience is seeing the face of God when you perform and being transformed by it. I love that. That's what we train people to do. That's what our life message is.
It's powerful and impactful to hear someone doing it out.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Professionally, I'm still, I think, processing the image of you at a piano, worshiping God and inviting him in, but other people catching a glimpse of him as well. Where do you want to go with that? Having now that you have that testimony, what is the Lord speaking to you about that? What does that look like for you to continue to grow in that space?
I mean, I've had it for the longest time. I want people getting set free while I play. I want emotional healing. I want inner healing. I want physical healing, broken arms, casts coming off, wheelchairs, like whatever, if we can do it on a Sunday morning, why can't we do it? And I love that you mentioned the sacred secular thing, because I think that was one of the most key things that I learned early on that shifted everything for me, was there is no sacred secular divide. Because I, in my head, thought when I'm a classical pianist, I have to be serious and I need to play. And then when I'm Sunday morning worshiping, then that's when I can be free and that's just worship. And it's like, no, I want to worship God at the piano no matter what genre I'm playing. I mean, how ridiculous that we would try and limit God to a genre. Sorry, God, this is a classical piece. Can't have you here. Like, hello, he's above all. He's in all. He's through all. So use me wherever I am. And if you don't want me on this stage, you won't give it to me. So I start praying about the stages he's putting me on. I pray for the audience that's coming. I pray for open hearts. And actually, I mean, I had a friend give me a word 2 weeks ago. He said, I really feel like there's going to be emotional healing tonight. And then I got a message from someone who had lost someone to suicide. And she said that finally she was in touch with her grief during my performance and she could really sit with that. And she thanked me for the gift that I've given her. And then you start to realize that God is healing people through this. And that's how important this is. And so it's really important that I show up on offense. And I'm not like, oh, I hope I'm good enough. And oh, I hope they like me. It's not about me. I show up and I'm ready to go. And like, let's make this happen. Open heaven.
Let's go. Come on.
Fab and our wives, we were in Canada not a few years back, and I shared with Fab and the team, and that as we were preparing to speak at the conference for the first evening, I was feeling super tired and down, and maybe just on conferences in general, which I have a mixed relationship with. But he said something to me in the Holy of Holies in a hot shower. He spoke to me and he said to me, see, that this is not going to be another conference, because what you call creativity, I call breakthrough. And it was in that moment, it was almost like, how Native Americans have like totems and animals and, things that are symbolic of other things. And I realized that I had given a name to something that God actually calls breakthrough, which is what I hear you describing. On a funny note, I got this picture of you like as a bouncer, just telling God, no, sorry, you're not allowed here. But say, yeah, no, sorry, this is secular. You can't come in, Jesus. Which is a ridiculous notion if you think about it.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, what I love what you were doing is, we can't compartmentalize our art and our faith.
Well, we can't compartmentalize him.
No, we can't. But the thing is, what we do is,
although we try,
what Michelle is saying, I think classical pianist, I can't invite him into it because it's a classical piece of text, which he gave the inspiration for in the first place. It's like if I'm teaching my students, like play a Macbeth or play a Hamlet, like God gave the inspiration to Shakespeare for those characters.
Absolutely.
And it's like he's already in them. So we're just inviting, it's like what we call performing in the presence. You can't take him out of your performance.
Michelle, was it Bach or Beethoven that was honestly churning out worship songs on a weekly basis?
Exactly. Bach was writing cantatas every week, and the craftsmanship of these pieces is unbelievable. I think he was really the most beautiful example of someone who did it in a faith way, but the craft was there, the work, the discipline, the art was all there.
Yeah, it's almost like the worship came through in his excellence, in his craftsmanship. I've been pondering this quote that was forwarded to me by one of my screenwriters from C.S. Lewis, and I'll butcher it here. We read it in one of the other episodes, but one of the key phrases that he says is, "There's no such thing as a Christian chair." There's just right, which is a ridiculous notion when you think about it. No, but think about it, because just totally today I was interviewing Nathan Scoggins, a screenwriter, and he says, this. He remembers at the age of 7 talking to a filmmaker and saying to the filmmaker, "So are you a Christian filmmaker or a filmmaker who's Christian?" Now think about that for a second.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And so it's a kind of a silly notion, the idea that there's a thing called a Christian film, outside of the fact that it is a marketing and a genre tool, which I understand, but there's no such thing, really, when we start to think about it. And it's a ridiculous notion that there would be a Christian chair or a Christian meal. There is no equivalent. But somehow in art, because of marketing, we've distorted this particular thing. When you look back at the canon of classical, of what we would describe today as classical music, which again is a sort of term applied now in retrospect. And by the way, not all classical music is historically classical music per se, because there's other time periods involved in there, but we just throw this around, right? When you think back, of all the pieces that you play that are so-called classical, which one to you do you feel the Lord in when you play? Which one to you feels like it has the heart of worship?
I mean, you just can't beat Bach if we just come back to, I think because of the excellence in the craftsmanship, the inner lines, the inner workings. It's like you can get a glimpse of the details, the intricacies, kind of gives you a glimpse. Like when you look at nature and you see how much detail there's in that, you see God in that. That's kind of how I feel about a Bach fugue.
Wow. And on your journey, Michelle, like with all the obstacles and you've had to overcome, and if you were talking to a young artist, any young artist starting off right now, what advice would you give them? Whether they're a believer or they're a non-believer, what advice would you give them?
I mean, I have the privilege of teaching entrepreneurship now to conservatory kids. So they're about 10, 12 years younger. So I think about this, what do they need to know now? And I think it really is about this abundance mindset. Look for the opportunities and show up fully, like go for it, take it and see what it leads to. Because I mean, I could never have planned the career that I currently have, but I know what the world told me success looked like as a classical musician. And I'm not that in that little 1% niche that I also thought I had to be in. So yeah, I think it's about, don't dismiss things because you don't see the potential now, because the potential might come as you start digging and then you see that there was something to it. If we go back to COVID, there was kind of two groups of people we were talking to. One who were saying, everything shut down, a lot of negativity, that we can't do anything. And then the ones were saying, okay, what's possible? So I want, the younger generation to say what's possible.
Michelle, there's a question that we like to ask Fab and I, looking back to that little girl that was sitting at the piano playing sacred country music. What would you say, looking back from this vantage point now, to that little girl, to younger you?
Oh man, once I was playing a concert. I don't know, I was probably 10, and I walked on stage and I sat at the piano, and they didn't announce my name. Well, they did, but I didn't know they did. So I was sitting there just waiting for them to announce my name because they were supposed to say my name before I played. And then my dad in the audience was like, "Give her Michelle," which like is Canadian for "go for it, Michelle," right? So I think I would just tell that little girl, like, give her, just go for it, because you can't plan what's gonna happen. So just have fun and see what's gonna open for you.
Yeah, I love that, because we focus so often on the destination rather than on the process. And I think the journey of an artist is the most important thing. It's like you said before, some people teach their art. Some people have to go out and get a restaurant job, but it's about a portfolio life. It's not just about, we either make it to be the top concert pianist or the top actor or the top director. It is a portfolio life, and all of that should enhance your journey and add enrichment to you.
Listen, there's a heck of a lot more journey than destination in my experience, and there's way more practice than there are concerts. And I remember when I was auditioning for this little black box production back in conservatory, I was miserable because I was anxious about the audition. And it was in that moment at 19 years old where I thought to myself, okay, so let me get this straight. I'm miserable when I'm not auditioning because I'm scared I'm not going to get an audition. When I get the audition, I'm miserable because I'm afraid I'm not going to get it. And then when you're doing the gig, you're scared. Then when you're watching the gig, you're criticizing yourself. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, when am I actually going to start enjoying this journey?
Michelle, thank you for coming on. Thank you that it's a huge 8-hour time, 9-hour time difference with you. So we really thank you that you stayed up this late at night, specifically when you've got to go to France tomorrow. But would you just mind praying for us?
Absolutely.
Before we end the episode? Thank you, love.
So who are listening? Actors mostly?
No. It's artists across the board.
All right, let's do this. Yeah, Father God, thank you so much for this conversation, for the things that you've taught us about what creativity means to you. Thank you that you gave us creativity, that you're a creative God, and that we're made in your image to reflect your glory. Father, I pray for every artist listening, every creative person, that you just infiltrate, you just shift how they view creation with you, not for you, but with you, and that they understand the importance of what they do, that they find the possibilities, and that you open new doors for them of abundance and prosperity, and that you bless what they're doing in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you, Michelle. We really appreciate you having you, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
And for those of you here at the Story of Podcast, we'll see you soon.